When I started telling people that I didn't want to be a mom, people seemed shocked. They basically started to tell me that choosing the child-free life would mean that I wouldn't be happy. I mean, they didn't exactly say it in those words, but they said things like this. You'll never understand what real love is until you're a mom. Children are women's greatest achievement ever. I used to say that too, but then I became a mom and I just can't imagine my life without my kiddos. Nothing is better than the smell of a new baby. You are missing out. For the most part, I do think people mean well when they offer this kind of feedback, even though it doesn't always sound very good. They've had the experience of being a parent and they have found that to be very fulfilling for them. However, when you keep hearing statements like that, those statements infer that you are missing out on a piece of life that has given someone else a lot of joy. And who likes to miss out on anything, right? So here's the question. Can child-free people even be happy? Are parents happier than child-free people, or are child-free people actually happier than parents? Welcome to Wife Without Kids. I'm Hannah. This channel is all about building a positive and non-judgmental community to support you in your child-free life. How do you actually really measure people's happiness? Doesn't everybody feel happiness in a slightly different way? I've heard moms say that the smell of a baby brings them like true happiness. For me personally, the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls being pulled out of an oven and being drizzled with icing is like my moment of happiness. I could totally go for a Cinnabon right now. There's no universal happiness scale that we can all measure our happiness on, and trust me, I know because I looked this up. There is, however, a universal happy index meter.
False.
Nope, I said that wrong. It's actually called
a universal happy planet index meter.
And it rates countries' well-being, but that's kind of like a whole different topic and it kind of took me down a rabbit hole. Most of the articles and studies that I read, and I'm totally not going to bore you with all the stats, they do show that having a baby makes people really, really happy. I mean, for the most part, there's always an exception.
There's a happiness bump right after a healthy baby is born, and that tends to dissipate over the course of a year. And after that time point, what we see is gradually diverging happiness between parents and non-parents in the United States.
So initially, the experience of pleasure and happiness is like through the roof when you have a baby. Okay, I'm going to assume they mean after the birthing part because I don't think that would be very enjoyable. From what I've heard, I wouldn't know. But does it last? And we all know the answer to that is nope, it does not last. Following that initial high, there's definitely going to be the reality of parenting, and that's not always going to be enjoyable. Those moments of bonding and connection are something that child-free people are obviously never going to experience. But does that mean that they can't be happy people because they haven't had that experience? I feel like happiness is kind of a nuanced concept that's made up of overall life satisfaction. And obviously, while having kids does initially spike people's happiness meter, it doesn't stay there. I feel like parents probably experience more of a roller coaster of emotions having kids, and then child-free people tend to be a bit more stable and much less of a roller coaster. I once heard a parent describe raising kids as being similar to this, which I'm gonna have to take their word for it because I just wouldn't know. I think a life without kids is just more simple, and I'm totally okay with that. Mr. Stone does a lot of research about this topic, and here's what he found, which I thought is pretty interesting given all the changes that have happened in our world over the past few years. The average person still describes the good life or the ideal life as getting married and having children. So for a lot of people, the definition of happiness does definitely include children.
Children make people happy.
So here's something super interesting. Connie is a mom of 2 kids, and she's written a book about kids. And you know what the book is called? 40 Reasons to Not Have Kids. Now, Connie actually describes herself as being a happy person. She says she didn't feel that she needed kids to fulfill her life or to give her happiness. She had happiness before she had kids, and she's had happiness since her kids have moved out of her home.
Having children means less opportunity, less fun, less freedom, less money, less sex.
I love how she gives her completely honest thoughts about her parenting experience. Connie doesn't say that she regrets her kids, but she said having kids required a lot of sacrifice and it was really challenging for her.
It can be a good surprise, but it can be a bad surprise. You never know.
We know from statistics that birth rates have been declining for quite a while now.
Today, about 15% of women reach their 40s without ever having had a kid.
There are still approximately 130 million babies that are born in the world every single year. There are approximately 58 million people that pass away every year, so if we do some quick math, the population is still growing at a rate of about 72 million people per year. That's a lot of babies being born. Now, in spite of all of that growth, women are still very encouraged and often pressured to have babies. At least one, or maybe 2 or 3. There's always this idea put out there that women are born with a biological clock.
Women are born with a fixed number of eggs in their ovaries, normally around 2 million. By the age of 37, there's only 25,000 left.
So basically, by the time I married my husband, most of my eggs had already left the building. I used to have this idea that I would eventually get to a point where I just had to have a baby because of my biological clock, even though I never actually wanted to have a baby.
I had 3 friends share with me that they were pregnant themselves. I started to really worry that something was wrong with me. What I was relieved to discover is that there is no scientific evidence that there's a thing called a maternal instinct that drives women to become mothers.
Interesting. Maybe that's why I've actually never wanted a baby, even from the time I was really young. Now, there are so many reasons why people just might not want children. The cost of raising kids, the state of the world right now, other opportunities that present themselves. It seems like now more than ever before, there are so many opportunities that you and I can take advantage of. Past generations didn't necessarily have the means, the time, or the resources to pursue some of the opportunities that you and I get to pursue. These different types of opportunities, whatever they might be, give people a lot of fulfillment, a sense of adventure, joy, and happiness. And sometimes in life, you just can't have it all, so you have to make a decision. Which are you going to choose? You could technically say that kids actually have competition with adventures that the world has to offer. There was a study done in 2019 where it said that parents and Childfree were pretty close to being equal happinesses. I don't think happinesses is a word, but I'm just going to use it anyway, as long as the parents' kids had moved out of the house. So there's that. Happiness is actually kind of a subjective thing. It just depends on who you are and how you've been raised and what you've experienced in life. Some people will experience a small positive life event and it will give them so much happiness for a really long time. Some people need really big life events to make them happy. When I was young, my family didn't have a lot of money and we rarely got to go out to eat, like maybe 2 times a year. And I remember being so excited when my parents were like, we're going out to eat. And I would just be like, oh my goodness, I couldn't wait. And I remember I would be so excited to go back to school on Monday and tell my friends that I had gone out to eat. And my friends, I remember several of them were just like, so? Who cares? We go out all the time. For me, that experience of going out to eat was like the highlight of my month, or probably like one of the highlights of my year. It was so exciting. But to my friends who went out to eat all the time, it was just nothing. It didn't necessarily give them any happiness, but it filled me with a lot of happiness. So who is really happier, parents or child-free? Parents are going to have higher highs and lower lows emotionally than child-free people. Child-free people will typically have more stable lives with less extremes in emotions. I think both parents and child-free can be equally happy. It just depends on the decision that you want for your life and how much support you have once you make that decision. The reality is that some people's happiness is just not going to be found in having kids, while other people are going to get an incredible amount of joy by having the experience of being a parent. Obviously, parenthood is very encouraged and accepted. But I think we have a ways to go until society recognizes that child-free people can have a very happy and fulfilling life even without kids. Go ahead and check out the video that appears on your screen if you're curious about some of the perks that child-free life offers.